Do you have problems? Do they suck real bad? Well, you're in luck because today's episode we are taking a look at the origin of problems. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Yeah, so we were thinking about episodes because nobody submitted an idea for an episode this
Man,
week, and it's all everyone listening's fault. No, I'm just kidding. But basically, we are open to ideas that you have for episodes. So if you have any ideas for episodes you'd like to hear, you can post in the comments. You can send us an email in the show notes. So we'll be more than happy to do episodes, answer questions you might have, all that fun stuff.
yeah, I like
Now,
answering direct questions. It's nice.
it is cool. It gives it kind of like a back and forth type of
Yeah.
feeling to the episodes. So today we're talking about the origin of problems because, I keep getting deceived into this happily ever after type of thing where I think one of these days I'm going to solve all my problems and not have any more.
You know, I was thinking about that. It is funny how you don't, you don't realize it obviously when you're younger because it makes sense. You're in the process of growing up, but like so much of the issues with how we sort of interpret the world stems from stuff we picked up when we were younger and stuff we're sort of fed every day from around us, like socialization, social conditioning, right? Like all these movies we see, and they're great, right? Like even not just kids' movies, you always have like the thing of Disney and stuff. There's always that happily ever after, right? Literally. Like they meet and that's it. Everything's great after that, you assume. But even in like romantic comedies, even like most action movies, there's a point at which like the audience is left to assume that everything worked out and everybody's good. And that's not really an accurate picture of life. And I think
And
that's a big part of it.
yeah, and worse than that is that when your life doesn't look like that, you feel like there's something wrong with you.
Well, and I think that's kind of I think that's one of the biggest problems too now with like the amount of media we have between social media, like all the streaming services, the news, everything. We're constantly seeing stuff and we still kind of like, I think, interpret it with this incorrect interpretation that goes back to like those happily ever afters. So we see like, social media and you see somebody's Facebook or something, you see their great vacation and you think their life must be awesome, right? Because you're not thinking about the whole life. You're only seeing one little part of it. And I think that it really is like it's interesting how much I think that has like just messed up our ability to like have a real, I don't know, like a real sense of our lives and what to expect, expectations. Because
Hmm.
problems have always
And
been there, right? I mean, like you can't. There's always gonna be. I mean, that's what we're problem solvers. I mean, that's what we
but it's like
do.
easy to look at those examples, like the social media things, and you see these celebrities and whatever doing whatever, and you're like, oh, if only I had money, then all of my problems would
Yeah.
disappear. Or if only I had that car or that house or that partner, then all my problems would be gone. And I get suckered in this thing all the time because I make myself miserable that I don't have these things, and then,
Yeah,
I
I
think
do that
one day I'll
too.
be happy.
Especially when like it's particularly bad when I'm in like when I'm already in like a mood, like when you're already like tired or something or already feeling depressed, like it gets really bad. But yeah, it's easy. I think it's really easy and really problematic. But when we're not feeling good, to quickly find things to blame. And it's
Yeah.
always these simple things like, oh, it's money. And money's an easy one. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have enough money, it's hard, granted. But that's not going to suddenly make everything better. It's not going to change you as a person. It's not going to change your situation. It's not going to change
It's just going
anything.
to change what your problems are.
Yeah,
Like, no
exactly.
longer is buying things a problem, but guess what? Relationships are problems, work
Yeah,
is a problem, your
everything.
legacy is a problem, keeping your money and not going broke is a problem, all these different things.
And it always
But
cracks me that we made things so hard
yeah,
because it's just all us. I mean,
yeah. I'm happy that you touched on when you're not feeling good, how it can get so much worse. Because you know how they say there's like that they say like when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired
yeah.
to like whatever. Well, I actually was thinking about it because also when you're in pain, it can make you feel worse. And so if you put the P at the beginning of halt, then it spells fault, like the cool funky way with PH.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's not your fault if you're miserable if have any of those things going on.
It is
And
true though.
I've been thinking about that recently because like when I get down, I used to beat myself up a lot, and I still do a pretty darn good job of beating myself up. But I'm also practicing catching myself doing it and seeing if I'm in pain, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And even if I'm not, just being like, hey, you know
Yeah.
what? In a week, if I get 5 good days and 2 bad days, that's great. So this must be one of the bad days, and just not beating myself up about it.
No, it is good. Like letting yourself have that opportunity to have a bad day, right? And not I do the same thing too. It's hard. But catching I notice I can catch myself faster now, which is good. But I think it's also I don't know, I was thinking about that the other day. Like I think it's also because when we are any of those things are affecting us, you're in pain, you're tired, hungry, whatever, right? Your your energy levels are already lowered. So like your ability to like I always think of like your ability to handle more stuff has been dramatically reduced because you don't have the energy to do it, right? Like especially like think if you're in pain or you're really tired, everything is hard, right? Because you just don't have the energy. Like you're using energy to already deal with the pain or you're already exhausted and low on, energy. And so anything that comes up then or anything you think is going to seem insurmountable, even though on a normal day when you're not feeling like that, probably isn't that. I mean, it might still be difficult, but it's not going to be that insurmountable, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. So then we come back to what's the origin of problems? And yeah, I was thinking about it because I there was this book that I was reading, uh, and it was talking about all you have to do is accept all that is unacceptable.
Hmm.
And I was like,
Very
oh,
Taoist and like, yeah.
yeah, right. How about that? But that's kind of it because problems come because you don't accept something.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, or you have like, you don't accept something, you're misinterpreting things, stuff like that. It's hard though, because, it's like, I've read a lot of philosophy and it's funny. And even like, you read things like that, it's easier said than done, of course, right?
Duh.
Yeah, and I think that is important to point out. Like, yeah, it's letting that go would be awesome, but it's not exactly easy. It takes time. But yeah, I think that is a
Mhm.
huge part of it. It probably is mostly just it's us, right? Like it's I think we forget a lot how much the world we experience is because of us. It's because
Yeah.
of our mental state. It's because of our feelings. It's because of the way we're thinking that we're seeing the world a certain way and interpreting a certain way. Because think about it, like otherwise, how would it be possible that you can have a really great day, everything seems awesome, and then like a month later have a really bad day, but when nothing ostensibly has changed in your life, right? Like you're still in the same area geographically, you probably still make the same money, you still know the same people, you're still doing the same routine. Like, so why is it that that one day is interpreted so much worse than the other? And why is the other one interpreted so much better? I mean, that's the other flip side of that, right? And it's just us. It's just our brains. And I think if we realize that, and it's just like, I think, the existentialist ones like Camus and mythicists is all about this, right? Our power of interpretation is really, really powerful. I mean, we can do almost anything with it and change things dramatically just by reinterpreting them.
Yeah. I like what you said there. It's part of being human. Like as humans, we get to have problems. We make mistakes all the time. But I was also thinking about how you were talking about like why some days it's good and some days it's bad. And it's kind of like, because as humans, we try and maintain this like homeostasis, this like golden mean. And
Yeah.
so when we go too far away from the mean, it's painful or problematic. Or if we go too far in the other direction, painful or problematic. So maybe the problems exist to kind of help keep us on the tight and narrow.
No, it's funny you say golden mean too, because that's like what Aristotle says about virtue, right? Like the reason we should be virtuous, or one of the main benefits from it, is that we get a balanced state, right? You have balanced character. And so you're better equipped to deal with the regular ups and downs of life. Like he knew that like, life is even if you're a wise person, even if you're completely virtuous, people are still going to die. Things are still going to happen, mountain might still explode with a volcano, whatever, right? Things are still going to occur. And so, but if you have virtue, if you have strong character, you're going to be more equipped to deal with that in a level way. Right, and not be thrown to those extremes where I think most of us are thrown to the extremes, right? We're either wildly happy or wildly depressed. And that middle state, I think that's the other, maybe it's because we also look for we look for the extreme of happiness, I think, because I think a lot of us interpret happiness as that more extreme state when really it probably shouldn't be. That might be like maybe a problematic state, like equivalent to, almost like depression, right? Where like you have these extremes. And so really more of a balanced kind of middle would be better of an interpretation, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I was thinking about this week, this like concept of perspective, because maybe we have these problems because we're so focused on our life. Like
Yeah.
I was contemplating like, young kids who join the military and they go like literally risk their lives for a president that they may not even enjoy or a ruler they may not even like. And so I
For
was
values
looking
they
at
might
that.
not even agree with. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
And I was looking at that and I was like, what could possibly make someone okay with doing that? And I was like, well, maybe if they don't think, because we're so like closed down that we think that our time frame is only our life or whatever is going on today or this moment. But like if we kind of zoom out to like all of the history of humanity or of the universe or of all of that stuff, then really whether you die or don't die today is kind of inconsequential because in the grand scheme of things, you've been dead for 99.99999% of
yeah.
the history of
Yeah.
the everything. So it's maybe we just, we take life too seriously.
I think we do. Isn't that the bitch of it though? Because it's like that's the other problem, right? If you kind of like pull yourself back from like that perspective of like the cosmos and stuff, nothing means anything. Humanity means nothing, right? I mean, like we're eventually the sun's gonna explode, all of this universe is gonna go away, like everything, right? So you can't find meaning there. And this was Camus' point, right? Like we always want to know what the purpose and meaning of life is, but we ask the world and the universe is always silent. It won't say anything, right? It's not going to respond. But then when you come down to the narrow perspective, like you were saying, of our lives, everything has this like crazy importance because, and I think you're right, it's just this perspective, right? That we can't see ourselves from that broad perspective all the time. And it would be hard probably to live like that all the time. And then in the narrow perspective, everything takes this immediate importance because it seems like everything has a consequence that's directly affecting us.
Yeah. Kind of off topic, but I was so like we've both read The Expanse. I'm on I think like
Yeah.
the second to last book right now.
Nice.
And I'm not trying to spoil it, but there's a part where, basically this whole galaxy just is vaporized, gone. And instantaneously. And I was thinking like, man, how do you go on live like because at least my my assumption, and it could be totally wrong, but like the feeling is gonna get older and then sicker and then eventually die. But like, what happens if it's just gone like that and you don't see it coming at all? Like, how do you?
I mean, I don't think you do anything. You're just gone.
Yeah,
You know? Yeah, it is crazy to think about that because, yeah, they do literally. The whole thing's just gone. That's a
because that can
good point, by
happen.
the
That
way,
can
to
happen
stop the
to
show
like,
and just do the books.
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, but I mean, it could happen to anybody. Like, you could get hit by a bus that you didn't see. You could just like
Yeah, it's
stroke
just
out and
crazy, isn't
just
it?
yeah, and that can happen to anyone, anytime.
Well, what's funny is too, you don't think that when you're younger, unless like there are cases where obviously people have experiences where somebody close dies sudden that's young and all. But like I know, like I remember when we were in high school, I think it was our senior class. It was during the senior class trip. Like four kids got hit by a drunk driver on their way home and died. Remember that?
Hmm.
I remember that was like crazy to me because that was the first time I knew anybody like close to my, my age essentially that had
Yeah.
died. But as you get older, that obviously gets, you see people die more often. But like, yeah, it is kind of crazy, and it can happen just like that, like where it's just like there and then not there. And the weird
Hmm.
thing is like you immediately realize that the world just goes on. Like, yeah, it's hard for some people for a little while, and yeah, people that loved you and all, and there's some things that happen, but those ripples, they're not that,
And and it's because like how there's that thing where like we're the main character in our story and everybody else is a secondary character, but in their story they're the main character. And so like those people who disappear, it's kind of like, well, they weren't main character. But
Yeah.
what happens when it's the main character?
Well, exactly, right? It's somebody else's story, then somebody else takes
Somebody
that
else is
role.
like, I don't care.
Well, it's like look at like people like idolize these ultra wealthy people. Look at Steve Jobs, dude. He got he died. There was a biography. There was a lot of talk for like a few weeks, and then I haven't heard about him at all. And no one has. No one cares about him anymore, right? We moved on. And the generations now that are younger, they don't know him. He wasn't that guy that made the iPhone. He wasn't the guy that created the iPod, and changed all this stuff. So for them, he's just history, right? He's like,
That's crazy.
if you think
Yeah.
about it that way, it's kind of insane. Like for people born
Yeah.
now, he's equivalent to like, I don't know, any other person from history, just some guy that
Any
did
other
something.
old dead person. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jeez. So problems come about because we're human, and
yeah.
guess what? You're never gonna get rid of them.
I think because maybe we expect, like you said, we expect too much. You know, we expect this shit to mean more than it should mean. or than it actually means, or to matter more than it actually matters. And maybe
Hmm.
we just need to back off a little.
Yeah. It's crazy because I was looking at like problems that I have, and I'm just like I'm always struggling to get rid of problems.
Yeah.
Like there's this part of the meditations where Marcus Aurelius is like, when are you ever going to be satisfied? And I look at that to myself. I'm just like, when am I ever going to be satisfied? Because I'm always trying to get rid of these problems, and as soon as one goes, another 10 take its place.
But it's a double-edged type thing because I think on the one hand, yeah, it sucks. And I feel the same way, right? You're always trying to get rid of these problems. You're always trying to get to this point where you don't have any problems that can't exist, obviously. But at the other hand, they're also motivating, right? They also cause us to do new things. They make us create things. Problems are a motivation for changing things in our world, in our lives, right? To make things better. Usually our problems are things that we want to change because it's going to improve something, or at least we think it will. Whether it will or actually not is debatable, but right? So I think there is that side of it where like, suffering and problems are also, I mean, Nietzsche talks about this a lot, that we should reinterpret suffering not as negative, but as positive because it's an opportunity to overcome ourselves and to be something more.
Oh,
And
that's
yeah,
a
it
good point.
sucks, but it's not to say it's still not hard, but it's a way to like, yeah, make our lives better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like what David Burns says, where like, what does this problem say that's awesome about me and my values?
Yeah, basically,
Right?
right. It's the same thing. It's this idea, like through that we become something maybe better or closer to what we envision ourselves being, which is good.
Hmm. So there you have it. That's why you have problems
Yeah,
and why you're always going to have problems. And if you get rid of them for even a day, pat yourself on the back because there's more
pretty
coming.
amazing.
Yeah, right. It happens once every like 5 or 10 years where I'll be problem free for a couple of days and I'm like, I finally solved it, and then it just gets smacked by
Isn't
another
that
one.
crazy when you have like those, like you have a few days that are like really good, and you're like,
Yeah.
this is awesome. This is how it's gonna be
This
now
this is
forever.
finally what I've been working for. Yeah. Right. All right. Well,
Uh,
anyways, this has been another episode of the Existential Stoic podcast. We would love to make this more interactive. We can always come up with topic ideas, but if you guys have any ideas that you want to see as episodes on the Existential Stoic podcast, if you have any questions, anything like that, you can post down in the comments on YouTube. You can email us. That can be found in the show notes, wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, this is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.